Tonight we're going to be talking about a message on faith, and it's called Train Your Faith Like a Muscle, okay? So we're going to talk about faith as a muscle, because a lot of times when we think about faith, we think of it in terms of like, oh, it's something that just happens. Like, oh, you look at people who are older, who are wiser, who have been walking with the Lord for many years, and you're like, oh, it just happened. Like the Lord just chose them and it just happened for them. But a lot of times that's not how it works. You actually have to put the work in, and not like in a striving way, but in a way to exercise what you have in relationship with the Lord over time and consistency. And so faith is a lot like a muscle. Somebody tell me something they know about faith. What is faith? Brandon? It's believing in God. Yeah. Believing in something you can't see or even understand sometimes, yeah? Anybody else? Yeah, it's not just the belief that God exists too. It's the belief in God's goodness. It's the belief in God's character and what he will do and how he will accomplish it through you, right? In and through you. So we're going to start off tonight with 1 Timothy 4:8, and I might get you guys moving a little bit tonight, if that's okay with you. You guys, anybody here feel like they're really strong? We're gonna do some strength competitions tonight, because I would love to see how strong you are. So let me ask you this: how many of you guys would consider yourself like an athlete? Like, I am an athlete. I work hard. How many of you guys train regularly? Okay, so many of you consider yourself an athlete. Not very many of you train regularly. That's an interesting parallel. How many of you guys would consider yourselves as, like, steadfast and, like, strong in endurance? Like, I really, like, I'm disciplined. Who here would consider themselves disciplined? Okay. Nice. Okay. All right. So we got a few. What if you were to go and work out? What would you do for a workout? Somebody tell me what they like to do for working out. Yeah.
I'd probably run like on the treadmill.
Okay. Run on the treadmill. Yeah. Bench press. Brandon, how much you bench press? 14 pounds. Hey, we got to start somewhere, right? Yeah, Aaron. Run into the pantry. Oh my goodness. I can't. I lift all the time. I lift my fork to my mouth. That's what people say, right? Anybody else? What do you like to do for working out? Yeah. Squats? Okay. So we got some strength training. Yeah. So hard work. Hard work is awesome. In fact, there is no strength like farm strength. My grandfather, he was a tall man, but he wasn't a big, like, burly guy, you know? Like, he was a pretty, like, thin guy, and yet he was the strongest person I know. This guy could, like, lift things that I couldn't even, like, imagine ever lifting in my life. There were people in the gym, you know, that aren't even lifting half the weight of what this guy could lift to what he did on the farm, because he was a cattle rancher. But farm strength is, like, no joke. Those people are strong. It's, like, functional strength, too. Yeah, Justin. Okay, deadlifts and bench press, yeah.
Like last week, the military came to our school and they had like the weights. I had 100 pounds on my shoulder and did squats sometimes.
Fantastic. 100-pound squats. That's pretty good. Yeah.
My mom is sometimes makes me exercises, but she makes us this thing called warrior sit-ups. It's like a karate class for like 2 weeks and then we drop it out. But basically, it's like a sit-up where you sit up and then you go to the right and then the left, and that's one.
Okay, so it's like combining like a Russian twist with a sit-up. Okay, all right. I see where you're going there. Yeah.
At my auto tech program, we did squats with an F-150 tire above our heads.
Oh man, that was probably how many pounds do you think those things weigh? I bet. I mean, you've got to be, and that's an interesting thing, because a lot of us, like, okay, you might not consider yourself an athlete, but you may want to do something in your line of work that actually requires strength. Like being a mechanic, you could get squished really easily if, you know, you're lifting heavy engines and things like that. I suppose it is really important to have that level of strength if that's something that you want to do, right? Yeah. Okay, leg press. I'm all for leg press. I repped out, I think 455 this week. But that's like nothing compared to Danielle. Danielle, Danielle's in the back. She's a beast. What do you leg press? I don't know if what did she say, Aaron?
I think my last leg press was like 800 pounds.
That's crazy. What did she say? Did Danielle say what she lifts? 650. She's a beast. I'm telling you. Hunter's always got like ridiculous amounts of plates on that thing. I don't even know. I think he's like in the somewhere around the 800s or 900s now. But leg press is awesome. And there's a correlation they found scientifically. There's a correlation with longevity of life and lower body strength. So the stronger your lower body is, the higher chance you have of having a very long life. And a lot of working at an assisted living facility, you find that a lot of elderly people, they pass away from falls. They'll have a fall, they'll break something, it'll be really tragic and awful, and they'll end up passing away from that. And so having strong legs and strength training is really, really important. They call muscle the muscle of longevity, right? Or the organ of longevity. So strength training is extremely important to long life and to a healthy life, right? Now, I know that we're talking about faith, but we're talking about the correlation of why faith is like a muscle. And if you think about it, faith is also the muscle or the organ of longevity when it comes to relationship with the Lord. You cannot go the distance in your relationship with God without strong faith. You need strong faith to be able to reach your calling, to be able to reach the things that God has for you. All right, so we're going to go to 1 Timothy 4:8 tonight. If you've got your Bibles with you, you can look it up on your phone if you'd like, or your Bible. And it says this. It says, "For bodily exercise profits a little, but godliness is profitable for all things, having promise of the life that now is and that which is to come." So godliness is profitable for all things, right? For every area of life. Is it important to exercise your body? Yes. That's an important component of reaching your calling and being able to do all the things that God has for you in life, and to have a successful, thriving life, an enjoyable life even. Because there is nothing worse than feeling sick all the time. How many of you guys get sick often? Anybody in here is like, I'm sick all the time and I'm over it. Being sick sucks. It is not fun, right? But if you take care of yourself, it does give you the ability to continue on and to enjoy your life, right? But even more important than just physical exercise is spiritual exercise. It is godliness, looking like God, having a relationship so much with the Lord that you begin to look like and act like Him, right? Let's go to Hebrews 12:11. Actually, that might have been the wrong. Let's see here. It says, "Now no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it." So it's talking about being trained by righteousness, right? This scripture. What does that mean? No chastening seems to be joyful for the present. Does anybody know what that means? No chastening seems to be joyful for the present, but painful. What is chastening? Anybody? You've never heard that word? I'll read it in a different translation for you. This translation says, "Now all discipline seems to be painful at time, yet later it will produce a transformation of character, bringing a harvest of righteousness and peace to those who yield to it." So in that passage, it talks about chastening, but in this one, it says discipline. It's talking about discipline. Now, this could be interpreted as discipline from the Lord, the Bible says He disciplines those whom He loves, right? So He expresses to those who are on the wrong path, hey, you need to get back on the right path, right? Because when you love someone, you don't want to see them going down a path of destruction, right? But I think this is also talking about self-discipline, right? I believe, self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, right? We all know that. So having control over your impulses and your human nature is a huge part of stepping into a place of righteousness. And it takes training to do that. Most people don't just have the discipline for things right away. Somebody tell me a time when you didn't have the discipline to get something done, but the consequence made it to where all of a sudden you had the discipline to do it. You ever like, for example, you had something, a project, a deadline, and then you didn't do it, but then you got a consequence that was so bad that you were like, oh, I need to get this done. Like, it changed your perspective, right? Life consequences have a way of training us into a better way, right? Anybody who's ever gone through something where you're like, you've made the wrong decision and there's been a consequence from it, eventually, because of that consequence and feeling the weight of what you've done, it will give you a form of discipline to not do it again, right? It's like with small children. I remember my kids were little, they would always try to stick their fingers in the socket, you know? And you'd be like, no, don't do that, right? You like, just give them a little tap on their hand. No. That's going to hurt you. Ouch, that will be painful, you know? And they're so little that they don't have the ability to fully understand what's going to happen to them, right? So this is part of faith, right? Discipline and faith go hand in hand, because if they trust me as their mom to take care of them, then when I say, hey, that's going to hurt you, they don't need to fully understand how it's going to hurt them. They just are going to be safer if they believe me, right? And yet, sometimes, because kids have free will, they don't listen. And they find out real quick that being shocked by an electrical outlet is not fun, right? It doesn't feel good. And I can guarantee you that's not something that you're going to do again once you've done it one time. I remember when Isaac was younger, he was constantly, he would not sit still during meals. You guys, do I have any people in this room that's like that? It's like you can't even sit still long enough to eat your food. You're like wiggling all around. So he's always like wiggling everywhere. He's like dancing, he's jumping, he's doing all these things. And so he was sitting on this high stool and he's sitting there with this fork and he's eating and he's like wiggling and he's jumping back and forth and and I keep telling him, Isaac, you're going to get hurt. Please stop doing that. Isaac, you're going to get hurt. Please stop doing that. But did this kid listen? No. What does he do? He falls off of the stool and impales himself with a fork through his lip. You could literally see the other prongs on the other side of his lip. You know what he hasn't done since then? Jumped around with a fork in his hand. Hasn't done that. Not in a long time. Why? Because the pain of the discipline and the consequence of that action helped him to realize that is not worth it, right? It's not worth it. And so you can learn by discipline and wisdom of others, or you can learn by the consequences. One is far more painful than the other, right? I would rather be trained by the discipline of the Lord and having self-control than I would to be in really terrible pain in order to learn the lesson, wouldn't you? I think so. Anywho, so tonight we're talking about faith like a muscle. Obviously, the way that muscle works. Somebody explain how muscle works. How do you build muscle? Tell me something about building muscle. Do you guys know anything about that? By going through pain? Okay, what kind of pain? Like, should I just like get a knife and just, will that build muscle? Okay. Okay, so training your muscles, you grow them by training them. How do you train them? What do you have to do? Yeah, Brandon. Exercise. What kind of exercise? Does cardio build muscle? It depends. You can, there is a level of cardio in, you know, when you combine it with resistance trainings, if you're doing interval training or whatever, that can build up a little bit muscle and can maintain muscle, but real muscle is built through what? Yeah, resistance, right? You having to lift something really heavy enough times to completely wear your muscle out. And what happens is the fibers of your muscles, it tears down, and it's actually breaking down the muscle. But then after you exercise, there's something really important that you have to do to be able to rebuild the muscle back up. Do you know what it is? Hydrate, rest, something else. What does your muscle need to be built? What kind of food? Protein. Your muscles need protein to be built up. If you're not getting enough protein, then your muscles are not going to build back stronger than they were before, right? And so there's all these things that you have to do, that you have to keep up with in order to build muscle. Now, I've been on this journey, this health journey for the last year and a half, I started going to the gym regularly. I go like 5 or 6 days a week. I do a lot of weight training. And for an entire year, almost a year and several months, I did something called body recomposition, which I've talked about that before, I think, in here. But body recomposition is where you eat your maintenance calories, and I promise this will pertain to the lesson here in just a minute. But you eat your maintenance calories, which is like the amount of calories that you typically burn in a day, and you train really hard at the same time. And those calories help build your muscle while losing fat at the same time. It is possible to do that if you are a beginner. Now, if you're an intermediate lifter, it's a little harder, or an advanced lifter, it's a little harder to recomp. At those stages, you do something called bulking and cutting. Has anybody ever heard of that? So to bulk, you eat more calories than you need to help build the muscle. And then when you get done with your bulk and you have lifted with that calorie amount for, sometimes people do it for 3 months, sometimes people do it 6 months, sometimes people do it for a whole year. It just kind of depends on your personal goals. But you give your body more to work with so it can build those muscles bigger. And then at the end of it, you've not only gained bigger muscles, but you may have gained some fat as well, because that's normal. And you do something called a cut, which is lowering your calories below your normal usage rate so that you can get rid of the extra fat. And when you get rid of the extra fat and you cut down, all of a sudden, you're able to start seeing muscle definition peeking through that you didn't see before. Now, this is interesting to me because of the fact that, sometimes with faith is, we said that faith was about believing when you can't see what's happening, right? Faith is sometimes about when things are happening and you don't know exactly what's going to come of them. You don't know exactly, the situations or circumstances can look very bleak, and yet you have a belief in your heart that even though you can't see the change yet, that God is going to do something about it, right? God is going to intervene. God is going to come through for you, right? And a lot of times, that's how it is when you're lifting. Now, like I said, for a year, I did recomp, and I just lifted, but I still had this stubborn layer of fat over top of my muscles, and it felt like nothing was happening. And in fact, I was gaining muscle as I was losing weight, as I was losing fat, and so even though I was working really hard in the gym, I had lost no weight at all. In fact, I gained weight. I went from 100, my norm when I started was like 164 pounds or something like that. And I went all the way up to 171 pounds over that year, right? Now, meanwhile, my clothes are starting to fit a little bit different, but I don't really see a lot of the difference because it's all happening under the surface. There's still a layer of fat over that muscle that I can't see that it's there. I'm lifting with everything that I can in the gym. I'm trying to lift as heavy as I can. And in the last 3 months, I started doing what they call a cut. And in a cut, you do what you can to lose fat. And it has been so cool to see how the muscle gets revealed in this process, because it wasn't that the muscle wasn't there, right? But I couldn't see it. And I was frustrated because I had put all this effort and all this work into it, but I still couldn't see anything happening really. And I felt like my clothes were the same size, my weight was the same or more on the scale, and I'm like, how is it that nothing looks any different? And then in 3 months' time, I shed 12 pounds now. And all of a sudden, muscular definition is like, bam, it's there. In fact, it's to the point now where when I do, if I do shoulder presses, there are veins that pop out in my shoulder, and I can literally see the muscle fibers in my shoulder, which is really cool. And it's like, for the longest time, I couldn't see anything, and there was a part of me that was so discouraged because I was like, is this even worth it? I mean, a whole year of going 5 to 6 times a week and hardly seeing any difference. Now, I felt like I was getting stronger. I saw my weights going up. In fact, when I started, I was only leg pressing 145 pounds. And now I'm leg pressing 455 pounds. And that's 12 reps. That's not even a 1 rep max. So what I'm saying is that for the longest time, I had to have discipline when it seemed like nothing was changing at all. Even though in the natural, when I looked at from the outer appearance, it felt like nothing was happening. But then all of a sudden, something happens to where there's a cut. There's a change in your diet. The fat layer disappears, and all that muscle is revealed, and you go, aha, I'm so much stronger than I used to be. It worked. But the time that it took to get to this point was so long, right? I thought I would be where I am right now within a few months when I originally started this journey. And I think a lot of us are like that in our walk with the Lord, in our faith walk. We think, okay, if I just stick with following and pursuing God for, a few days, or if I could just do it for a month, then I'll be like, Beryl and Hickey, or I'll be like the Jesus Image people, or the people at Bethel, or I'll be like those people who go out in the street like Todd White and they pray over people and they're going to see people healed. We think that we're going to see these big changes to our faith in a month's time, in a couple weeks' time. But that's not how faith works. In fact, Jesus talks about faith like a mustard seed. You guys know that scripture? When Jesus talks about faith, he talks about it like a mustard seed. And the thing about it is, he says, if you have faith like a mustard seed, then anything will be possible for you. Now, the thing about this parable is that it doesn't mean that if you have this much faith, anything is possible. What it means is there's potential in the seed. If you can just put the seed in the ground, in fact, mustard seeds, they grow to be massive. And the amount of seeds that they produce once they grow is even larger. And then you think about one mustard tree, the seeds that it produced could create an entire orchard of mustard trees, right? And it could change the landscape. It could change the lay of the land over time with all the seeds that it produces, right? And faith is like that. When you invest, when you step into this place where you're saying, okay, I'm going to sow this seed, even though it's going to take a while, even though this process is going to be drawn out, even though it's going to take a lot of discipline, I'm going to continue to be consistent, and that's where the growth happens. It's in the consistency and being in it for the long haul that you start seeing big changes, right? So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but my first point tonight is just that faith is like a muscle, right? My second point tonight is about exercise, okay? You have to put faith into action. That is how it grows. Muscles only grow when they're used. We've talked about that. But faith grows when it's tested or when it's exercised. You don't know how much you've grown until you've been tested. You ever been there before? Like, for example, I remember the amount of impatience that I had years ago as a young teenager, as a young adult, when things didn't go the way that I wanted them to, the way that affected me emotionally, it was very much a roller coaster. Anybody, my roller coaster emotions people in here? Like, everything feels out of control when it doesn't go the way I want it to. I would feel real big dips in my emotion. Now, 15 years later, and all of motherhood and all this time developing patience, when things change, all of a sudden, I'm a completely different person than I used to be. As a teenager, I would melt to pieces and I would be emotional and it would wreck me. As a mother, 15 years later, because I've developed patience over the years, and it's not been like an easy thing, but a daily trusting the Lord, walking with the Spirit, growing in fruit of the Spirit. Now, when things don't go my way, it doesn't faze me at all. It's like, oh, yay, opportunity for spontaneity. This will be fun. Let's see how else we can handle this. Like, for example, I think I told you this story once, but Hunter and Ben needed to go pick up, I think it was like Easter time. They wanted to go pick up clothes from Marshall's, and we were already in the Belden Village area, and we didn't want to waste time taking us all the way home, coming back, and them then shopping. And the kids, in the beginning of motherhood, the idea of sitting in the car with 3 kids waiting for 30 minutes with nothing to do would have been like, oh my gosh, how am I going to handle this? Because kids don't like to just sit still. You ever notice that? They're not really a fan of that. They're not for that. And so at the beginning of motherhood, something like that would throw me for a loop. And they'd all be crying and I'd be crying and we're all just having a little powwow in the car. But years down the road, they say they need to go in there and I'm like, I got this, right? We bumped some music up as loud as we could. I opened the roof of the car. They all got up through the roof of the car, onto the roof of the car, and we're dancing. It was a whole dance party. Sounds crazy, I know. But there's little moments in life that if you can work with just having a good attitude, then the things that are treacherous and horrible in one season, when you grow in faith and patience in the next season, it can actually be an opportunity for something memorable. It can be an opportunity for something fun if you have the right attitude, right? But that doesn't happen overnight. That transition of training yourself to have a different kind of perspective and to think outside of the box and to be spontaneous and to have, like a personality where you can go with the flow, that kind of a thing. It takes time to develop, right? It takes time to have good character. Just the same way that it does with muscles in the gym. Muscles are not built overnight. If they were, we'd all look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But that's not how it goes. In fact, I know a lot of women who say, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get bulky. Girl, I've been lifting as heavy as I could possibly lift for a year and a half, and I still don't look bulky. So I don't think you're going to get bulky lifting weights the way that you think you are, unless you're like taking some kind of substance that you probably shouldn't take. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of consistency. So faith grows by action, just the same way that muscles grow by action. We have to build it through consistent action. And it's not just about what we consume necessarily, but also what we do with it. How often are you putting yourself outside of your comfort zone when it comes to your faith? How often are you pushing yourself to do things that feel uncomfortable for the sake of growing your faith? Because that's where the growth happens. The growth happens in the place where it's really uncomfortable. In fact, James 2:26 says this, faith without works is dead. So faith is not faith if there are no works. Faith is only real, it's only realized if you're working it. Because if you're not working with your faith, if you're not doing something with it, do you really believe? Right? So number one, faith equals muscles. Number two, faith is grown by action. So what's something, let's think about this in a practical way. What's something that would be uncomfortable for you but would push you to grow in your faith? Evangelizing. How many of you guys have ever felt like God was tugging on you to talk to somebody about the Lord? It can be very intimidating, can't it? I mean, you have to walk through the idea of this person could reject me. This could go really weird. They could think I'm strange. Like you think about all these things like, oh, this is going to ruin my reputation. Everybody's going to think I'm that weird Jesus-loving kid, You think about all these things, but at the end of the day, if you'll just put yourself out there, if God is asking you to do it, there are times where obviously persecution happens, but many times what happens is that there's breakthrough and there's change, and that changes not only your life because now, wow, I'm walking in fullness, I'm walking in fulfillment, I'm walking in purpose, but also it changes the life of the person that you're ministering to. How many would feel uncomfortable trying to tell someone about the Lord or talk to them about the word? Yeah, I mean, and that's honest. I mean, we all have to, if we want, but this is not something that it's not something that you just all of a sudden wake up one day and you do well, right? In the beginning, it's awkward. It's kind of like public speaking. Anybody here have a fear of public speaking? Public speaking, when you first start, is very difficult because you're like, I'm going to be awkward. There's going to be a lot of likes and ums, and I'm going to say things that people are like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And you're psychoanalyzing and you're second-guessing everything that you're saying. But the longer that you do it, the more comfortable you become. And faith and evangelizing and putting your faith in action is much the same. The more you do it, the more comfortable it becomes. When I was a kid, I think I've told you this before, but the first time I sang a solo, I was 6 years old. It was for children's choir. I peed myself. Legitimately. That's how scared I was to sing in front of people. I legitimately peed myself on stage. That's how scared I was. I don't know. I mean, nobody said anything, but you can bet your bottom dollar that I was scurrying off as fast as possible and trying to find somewhere to go to fix the problem and to let nobody ever know, right? But the thing is, when I started, I would literally, that's how scared I was. I would get hives every time that I led worship when I first started, where it would be red and blotchy all the way up to my chin because I was so nervous about what if I do the wrong thing? What if I mess up the song? What if I forget the lyrics? 15, 16 years down the road. Actually, I think it's been longer than that. I started leading worship regularly when I was I think it was 14 or 15 years old. So that would have been 18 years ago, I think. 18 years down the road, we wing it every week. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've messed up and not even batted an eye at it, because it's one of those things where you get comfortable doing what God's called you to do. It becomes something that's second nature to you. I don't have to think about it ahead of time. I don't spend lots of time. In fact, most Wednesday nights when we do a worship set for you guys, we don't even know what we're singing until an hour before service. We're learning on the fly. We're going with it. Before, when I was young and I was starting, I would practice a song for months before I got up and sang it in front of people, because I was that afraid. Oh, what if I mess up? But the more you practice your gift, the more you act on the thing that God has called you to, the more comfortable you get with it, the more it becomes second nature, and the more you will enjoy it and not be afraid of it. Like going to the gym. When I first started going to the gym, Danielle used to always say things like, I love going to the gym. I look forward to it. Like, I can't wait to get to the gym every day. And I'd be like, you are crazy. Like, I don't think I will ever be that person that can't wait to get to the gym. Fast forward a year and a half, and now I am that person. We went on vacation, and the Planet Fitness, the closest gym to us was a Planet Fitness that was 30 minutes away. And I literally was like, every day, can we please go? Please? Can we drive the 30-minute drive? I just want to go to the Planet Fitness. Never would I ever have imagined that would be something that I would find enjoyable, because I hated going to the gym. I hated working out. But the more I made myself uncomfortable, the more I put myself in the situation to grow muscle, the more I started seeing growth, the more exciting it got, and the more I started seeing other ways that it was improving my life. I wasn't groggy in the morning. I was enjoying my day. I felt like there was almost a high that you get hormonally from, the rush of lifting and making, conquering a challenge, essentially, right? And it's the same thing with faith. Anybody ever here gone out of their way to pray for somebody and felt really uncomfortable with it, but then it really spoke to that person and you were so glad you did it, because you almost feel like a faith high. You're like, oh, that was awesome. That was amazing. Like, I remember this one time, there was a lady who had a limp, who was a server at a restaurant that we went to. And she seemed like she was having a really bad day. Like, you could just tell. You know how you can just tell? Like, some people they carry themselves in a way that's kind of like grumpy, and you're like, man, she's having a rough day. And I felt like God said, I want you to pray for her and give her a big tip and just talk with her. And I'm like, she seems like mean. Like, she's scary looking, like she was scowling. She did not seem happy to be there. She was very short with us every time that she took our order or gave us something. And I'm like, oh no, she's going to chew me out for saying something probably. But I decided, you know what? No, I've got to be obedient to the Lord. And so I walked up to her. But when we were leaving, I handed her the tip, and she looked in her hand, and she just starts crying. And she's like, it's been a really hard day. You have no idea how much this means to me. And I was like, listen, I believe in the Lord. I don't know where you stand with your faith or what you believe, but would you be okay if I prayed for you? And she's like, yes, I need prayer. I'm in so much pain. And she tells me this story about this injury that she has in her leg and all these things. And so I'm praying for her. I ask her name. But the long story short, at the end of it, she's got a smile on her face. And I'm seeing how the Lord is using this encounter to change this woman's day. And you're like, yes, like, I want to be used like this all the time. This is awesome. Like, the fact that I get to co-labor with God, I get to partner with God to change the world one person at a time. That's awesome, right? But it's not something that comes naturally. Just like there's no world in which I could have walked into the gym a year and a half ago and leg pressed 450 pounds. It wasn't happening. But because I stayed consistent and because I lifted it a little bit every day, kept lifting, kept eating the protein, kept focusing on the things, because I stayed consistent with it, now I can do what I never could have done before. And the same is true of your faith. The more you push yourself out of your comfort zone, in just in the little things. You don't have to start with the big things. You don't have to start by standing on the street corner and preaching a whole message of the gospel to a homeless person. Start with something small. Maybe give them a $5 gift card to McDonald's and say, hey, God bless you. Start by make a TikTok account and post your testimony. Then you don't have to be in front of people, but it gets your message out there. We live in a day and an age where we have more opportunities to reach people than any other age before us has, right? We are connected by our fingers at all hours of the day, all hours of the night. In fact, probably a little too much, if you ask me. But we have this opportunity to get the message of the gospel out there in ways that Paul or the Old Testament, or not Old Testament, the New Testament believers could have never even dreamed of getting the message out this easily, right? It's an opportunity. So we have to work our faith in order to actually effectively use it. We have to train it. We have to push ourselves. What's one way that you could push yourself this week? Think about it. I want you to spend time with the Lord this week and ask yourself, what's one way that I can push myself out of my comfort zone to grow my faith? What's one thing that I could do that would be really uncomfortable for me, but that I could push myself to go and to do? Is there a single person maybe that God's asking you to pray for? Is there a person that you know that has a need that you could go out of your way and meet that need? Maybe go, give them a gift, give a gift of generosity, right? These are ways that we exercise our faith. All right, so we talked about putting faith into action. James 1:3 says, the testing of your faith produces perseverance. The more you push yourself, the more perseverance and endurance you have to push yourself more. Any of you guys who run track and field know that that's true, right? The more you push yourself when you're running each day, the more endurance you gain, and the longer you'll be able to push yourself in the long run, right? That's how it works. You push yourself a little further every single day. Now, there's another concept in training muscles that's called junk volume. You guys ever heard of that? It's like when you overdo it. Like you do too many exercises and you overtrain and you do a bunch of excess, and all it doesn't actually get your muscle to the fatigue and the regrowth, but it fatigues you in a way that makes it to where it's literally counterproductive to your growth. And I think this is kind of a parallel with striving. Sometimes we push ourselves too hard. We try to do things all on our own instead of letting the Holy Spirit lead us and guide us and doing the right amount of what he's asking us to do. Sometimes we go beyond what God's asking us to do. And so we don't want to strive. We just want to be led by the Spirit, right? And then my next point is about feeding your faith. How could you feed your faith? What's something that would increase the strength of your spirit? I mean, obviously, our natural body, we work on food. We work with food. We ingest food. But with our spirits, what do we consume? Yeah, the Bible, worship, the type of music you listen to, the types of people and conversations you're having. Everything that goes in and out of your ears are things that you are being invested in. When you are binging on Netflix for 12 hours a day but only reading your Bible for 5 minutes, what's more likely to have the strength, your flesh or your spirit man? Your flesh is going to overpower your spirit man every single time, because you're way over consuming the things that are not actually that good for you, and you're under consuming the things that are very nutritious for you. Now, I believe in moderation, right? Now, there is no moderation with cocaine, right? Like, is there any moderate amount of cocaine that I could take that would be like good for me or be okay for me? No, absolutely not. So sin is sin, right? The things that are bad for you are bad for you. You cut those things out, right? But I am not the person who says that when you do a cut that you should cut out all sugar and all the things that you love. I think you need to maintain some things that you love that aren't sin in your life. So for example, the way that this could parallel with your spirit, like if I'm trying to diet or do a cut and I'm trying to lower my calories, I might lessen the amount of rice that I have in a dish and instead trade it out for like a piece of chocolate, the same amount of calories for a piece of chocolate. Because I'm not really going to miss that extra rice, but I'm going to miss that chocolate. I make room for it in the space that I'm in, but I make sure that the majority of what I'm eating is nutritious and better for me, right? That's how you do it well. You keep some things that you enjoy. Now, the way that this parallels with the Spirit Man. Okay, there are shows on Netflix which are perfectly acceptable for us to watch, right? There's things on Netflix that are no harm, no foul, fun, shows that are just family friendly. There's nothing in it that is raunchy or nasty, right? Those kinds of things. That's fine. Watch a TV show. Enjoy it, right? But if it's sin, if it's cocaine, that's the stuff that you cut out completely, right? We're not going to have this temptation investing into our flesh man so much so that our flesh is in control and not our spirit, right? If we really want to see the muscle that we've built, if we really want to cut down to see what faith has been produced in us, the best way to get there is going to be feeding your spirit man with the things that are the best thing for you. And every once in a while, listen to, like, for example, secular music. I'm not the person who's in the school that all secular music is bad. Now, do I listen to secular music with a bunch of cursing in it? No. I don't really want those words to be stuck in my head all the time, because then when you're angry, you start spouting off the things that you've been hearing, and you don't even realize that you did it, right? It's like you're training yourself to say things that you know you shouldn't say. So do I listen to stuff with a bunch of cursing in it? No. Do I listen to stuff that has a bunch of stuff about drugs or sexual relationships outside of marriage? Or do I listen to music that has a bunch to do with things that are inappropriate? No. You're not going to find my playlist full of nasty stuff, right? That stuff I'm going to cut that out. If it makes me feel a certain way and it shouldn't, that stuff needs to be cut out. However, there are love songs that are totally innocent, right? There are love songs, that have nothing in them that are negative or sinful, or there's nothing wrong with that. Listening to that every once in a while, totally fine, right? But you have to have discernment to be able to discern what is something that's like really bad for me, that's really negatively impacting me, versus the things that are like, okay, I can have this in moderation. This is just like okay to enjoy in life, right? Going bowling with your friends, fantastic. Do it and do what you enjoy. But if you're going with a group of friends that's going to be smoking weed the whole time you're there, don't do it. It's not good for you. Right? That's not an appropriate environment. That's not something that's going to lift you up. That's not something that's going to strengthen you. Right? There's plenty of things to enjoy in life that aren't sinful. And in the same way, when it comes to building muscle, there's plenty of foods that you can enjoy that can make you feel satiated, make you feel satisfied, that is not going to wreck your progress, right? Your faith progress. If you really want to build your faith, you need to make sure that you're getting rid of, cutting the things that are going to be counterproductive to your progress, and adding in the things that make life enjoyable in moderation, right? Matthew 4:4 says, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." This is important. Your faith is grown by hanging on to the words of God, hanging on to the promises of God. If we want to feed our faith growth, if we want to feed our faith muscles the protein that they need, we're going to get that from focusing on the promises of God, focusing on the things that he has to say in his word. And the last thing that I'm going to say tonight is about rest. Rest is crucial for muscle development. If you are not getting sleep, you might as well not go to the gym. That's how crucial it is. Your muscles rebuild while you're sleeping. It is incredibly important that you are getting adequate sleep when you are training in order to build those muscles. And in the same way, if we want our faith to be big, we have to learn to rest in the Lord. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." So we have to take times where we set aside for just resting in God, just learning to trust him, just letting him bring us to a place of recovery. Because life can really beat you up sometimes, right? The circumstances, the things that we go through, the things that we're facing, the challenges that sometimes God allows to train us and to give us character and to build us into better people even. Sometimes you need a break from those things. You ever felt really anxious and you're like, I just need a break. Like, I wish I could just take my brain and turn it off for a minute. We can do that in God's presence. There's a place of peace in God that you can rest in him, and it can turn off all of the noise and all of the extra, and it helps you to recover from all that hardship that you've been facing on a daily basis. Discipline and consistency are the biggest thing. I can't build muscle in the gym if I'm not going consistently. I have to have a plan of action. I had to look at my schedule and really think long and hard about how am I going to make this happen? How am I going to make this a habit? I'm not going to make this a habit by just going when I feel like it. Because if I'm only going when I feel like it, I'm never going to go. If I'm only adding it into my routine whenever I have a moment to, I'm never going to go. So this is something that I have to plan out ahead of time. I have to schedule it in there. I have to prioritize it, right? If you really want to give God priority in your life, you should be scheduling out time for him. If you schedule time with your friends, but you don't schedule time with God, that's a dig, man. That doesn't make God feel valued, right? We want to value him. We want to prioritize him. If I'm making time for the gym and I'm saying this is my time that I go every day, but I'm not making time for the Lord, that's a problem, right? We're not going to grow in our faith without prioritizing and creating disciplines and routines that keep us in that. That could be a Bible plan. That could be, a devotion that you're doing. You've got to pick and plan out what you're going to do so that you stay consistent with it. Consistency only happens through routine mostly, right? Let's be honest. Most of us, without a routine, we will not stay consistent with something. And so we have to develop the schedule and the routine that we need that will progress us in the way that we want to progress with our faith, just like you would with your muscles. Luke 9:23 says this, if anyone comes after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. This is a daily thing. We need consistency. We need a spiritual discipline. Every day this week, I want you to pick a spiritual discipline and I want you to stay consistent with it. Maybe it's praying for 5 minutes. Maybe it's reading a chapter of the Bible. Maybe whatever it is, you need to find a spiritual discipline that you can start to create a routine with. When is the time in your life where it's easiest? Now, this can change season by season. When I was younger, I used to do it first thing in the morning. But my kids are up at the crack of dawn sometimes, and when they were little, it was even worse. I'd get up, and it's like they could smell me, and they'd get up, and I couldn't focus on reading because it would just be like immediate, like jumping into action in motherhood, right? But now that I have kids, it's easier for me to do it at night. So right before bed, I try to turn off all the apps. Sometimes I even just delete the apps off my phone that are going to be a distraction until I'm done, and spend time listening to the Bible. The other thing that's a practice for me, when I get in the car, what I do immediately is I connect my phone to the Bluetooth and I play the Bible on the speaker, and it just reads it to me. That's something that's a practice for me. When I get in the shower, a practice for me is to pray in tongues. Something that I regularly do. It's second nature. I partner something that's like a daily task with a spiritual practice so that I never forget to do it. So that it's something that continues regularly. This is how we create good spiritual disciplines and good spiritual habits. And in the same way that just like I, went on this whole year health journey and didn't feel like anything was happening, but then in 3 months, it was like everything changed because of the cut. You're going to look back a year from now if you will stay with these disciplines and you're going to go, wow, I'm not the same person that I used to be. This has totally changed me. In the middle of it, you might think, I don't even know if this is working. You're going to still feel some ups and downs. You're going to feel some frustrations. But down the road, you're going to look back and say, I'm so glad I did this. Never once have I ever gone to the gym and worked out and afterwards left and went, man, I regret that. Every time I've gone, I've been like, I'm so glad I did that. I didn't want to go. I didn't enjoy that. But the same is true with my relationship with the Lord. There's been plenty of times where I didn't feel like worshiping. There's been plenty of times where I didn't feel like reading my Bible. There's been plenty of times where I didn't feel like spending time with God. But I never did it and then looked back and went, man, I regret that. I wish I wouldn't have done that. Because once you're in it, once you're doing it, once you're acting in that faith and you're seeing that discipline, you start to reap the benefits of it. Does that make sense? You guys with me? So just because you don't see something happening, keep going until you do. That's when the real change happens. And then lastly, we have to maintain. Maintain it. Find the routine and maintain it. Stay consistent. You got to stick to it, right? Can't just be one time that you lift weights, right? One time that you come in. In fact, who in here said they felt really strong? Anybody? All right, come on. Okay, I want you to lift these weights. Have you ever done a curl before? No? Okay, so you're going to turn your hands outward, okay? And you're going to lift up all the way, and you're going to squeeze at the top, and hold for a second, and then you're going to lower it slowly. Don't rock your body, just your arms. Can you do that? I want you to go as many times as you can. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many of you guys think she's going to get? Keep going. 6, 7. No? You got that last one? Can you do it? Oh, see, here's the thing. You thought you couldn't do that one, did you? You can put them down for a second. She thought she couldn't do that last one. She looked at me and she's like, it's not happening. But then what happened? All of a sudden, you tell yourself, I got to try, right? And you push it out anyways, right? And a lot of times there's mind games when it comes to working out. You'll think, I can't go any further. But if you'll push yourself beyond what you think you're mentally capable of, then you'll find yourself repping out way more than you thought possible. And the same is true with faith. There's going to be a lot of times where you tell yourself, I can't do this. I can't share my testimony. I can't pray for that person that I don't know. I can't share my story with the whole class. I can't, there's times where we think that, right? We're really uncomfortable. But if you'll push yourself beyond that mental craziness that sometimes happens that tries to talk us out of things, you'll be so glad that you did it. And it doesn't just happen one time, like her biceps. Let's check your biceps. Are they any bigger than they were before? What do you think? No. One time's not really going to do it, right? It's the consistency over time that makes the difference, right? All right, thank you. Nice job. All right, let me pray for you guys, and you guys could get out of here tonight. Father God, I thank you so much for every student in this class, Lord. I thank you that you are teaching us that we need to get out of our comfort zone. You're teaching us to stop just trying to find what's comfortable and convenient, Lord, but to really follow you. Picking up our cross is not comfortable. Denying ourselves is not comfortable. You've called us to a life of discomfort, but in the discomfort is great joy when we finally overcome. In the discomfort, we learn perseverance. We learn great character. There's so much to be gained from trusting your way of doing things, Lord. And so I just ask that you would help us to do that, to be consistent, to set routines, and to see our faith grow over time the way that you designed it to. In Jesus' name, amen.